I want to welcome everybody who's watching us online or listening. Thank you for joining one of our services. We really appreciate it. And this is a great opportunity for every single one of us to just kind of open up our hearts and our minds to, hey, what does God want to say to me today? And I know for some of us that might even be an issue where we want, does God really talk to me? And he probably doesn't speak, in audible English. However, I do believe that if we open up our hearts and we listen to what these ancient scriptures, God breathed, people, filled with the Holy Spirit, writing this down, or just taking an account of what Jesus did and what he went through, hopefully that can touch every one of our lives. Hopefully that we would be inspired by that today. So I want to start by asking you a question. And some of you probably have thought of this, and some of you maybe haven't. But can you imagine if you knew you were dying and you knew you only had a day or two, a very short time to live? And if you've ever thought of this, if I knew I was dying and I could talk to the people that are closest to me. And I know for me, there's a couple of really close friends that I would like to, I want to talk to them before I die. And especially my family, extended family, my kids, my grandkids, that kind of stuff. I have a desire that I would love to talk to them before I die. And imagine if you did, if you called your family in and you had just a few hours. Think about this. What would you tell them? My guess, it would be the most important things to you. You would not talk to them about a Super Bowl game. You would not talk to them about a fishing trip. You would probably talk to them about the most important things that you are most passionate about, that have the most value in their lives. I know I've thought about this, and I don't wait till I'm dying. I do talk about this, especially with my family, but I know what I would share with them. I do. I know that I would tell them that don't get too caught up in this life. It's very fleeting. You can enjoy life, but don't get caught up in it. This life is very, very short. I would tell them to try every single day to daydream about heaven and eternity where we will spend forever. I would tell them that I am there waiting for them and can't wait to see them. And I would tell them things about staying close to God. That's what I would tell them. What would you tell your children and your family? Well, we have this great opportunity to almost sit with Jesus for this talk. Because what this series is all about is exactly that. The final hours for the next few weeks, several weeks, we're going to be talking about the final hours of Jesus. Actually, we're going to be looking at a window of about 20 hours. It might be 21 or 23, it might be 19. But we're looking at about the last 20 hours of Jesus' life. And then those very last hours, Jesus shares with the people that are closest to him what is the most valuable thing. Hang on, reminder that, hey, this is listen, I'm dying, I'm leaving. You guys hold on to this, do this, remember this, stay in focus in this. He gives us the most things he's most passionate about. And I really want to encourage you, if you're here today, to do your very best to make every week of this series, because everything he says is stuff that you and I want to know for our lives. Not just know, I want to be inspired by what Jesus said in his very final hours. I think it's life-changing, and I just want to encourage you, don't miss a week, because each one is so important. I'll tell you what, that in those last 20 hours, Jesus did a lot of talking. He did. And they're all important stuff, and we need to really pay attention and really listen to that. So today we're going to start the series off with the Last Supper. So Jesus he'd been doing ministry. He'd been with these 12 guys. He had 120 or more that were always with him, but he had these 12 all of the time. They're called apostles. They would be the foundation that would carry on this work of Christianity. And he spent every day with them for the last 3 years. And Jesus had spent so much time teaching. He was teaching all the time, teaching things that were about God and God's incredible love and his purpose and our problem with sin. And just all this. He went all around and he was teaching. And he said this, and I just think it's amazing. He said, I don't expect you to believe what I'm saying just because I'm saying it. Anybody can say they're the Son of God. Anybody can say anything they want. But he said, hey, as he went around, he said, I don't expect you to believe this, but believe the signs that you see. And as the Son of God, he did incredible miracles, unbelievable miracles, from raising the dead, walking on water, feeding thousands of people with a bagged lunch. He healed every kind of sickness and disease. He was doing all of these miracles. And I can only imagine from Jesus' perspective, I'm just thinking from his perspective, I'll bet he didn't want to stop. I'll bet he wanted to keep going. And there's more people to tell, there's more to do. But yet he knew his time was up. And that's when we come to the Last Supper, that he knew this is it. He knew that he would be betrayed that night, that he would be crucified the very next day. And so that's where we begin the Last Supper. That there he is with his group. And it's something they celebrated before. They every single year. They celebrated the Passover as Jewish people. But this would be the end of celebrating Passover, and he started a new thing called communion, Christian thing that we celebrate. But as he was laying there, I say that because around the Last Supper, around the table, they would lean on the ground, and they would kind of lean on their arm, and so they weren't sitting. The table was probably this high off the ground, so it was really lower, just to kind of get our picture. And there he is around them, and right then, as they're doing this Last Supper thing, Jesus did something nobody saw coming. Jesus did something that was unbelievable. He did something that almost was seen as crazy. And just out of the blue, nobody saw this coming. Nobody thought he would do this. Nobody even suspected something like this. And he did this. And this is where we're going to pick up the story. So he got up from the table, took off his robe, wrapped a towel around his waist, and poured water into a basin. Then he began to wash the disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that he had around him. This might not seem like that big of a deal to us, especially because we've heard the story before, most of us. But this was a huge deal. He got up from the table and washed their feet. Washing feet was a normal thing. They lived in a dusty environment. They wore sandals at any place. If you were invited to anybody's home, it was the natural thing to do to wash people's feet. Natural. That's not what's weird. What was unexpected about this is that who would wash somebody's feet? The person that would have the duty of washing feet would be the very lowest servant of the house. That if you had a servant, it would be the lowest servant. It would be the one that is the least valuable. If you had slaves, it would be a slave that would actually wash your feet. If you didn't have slaves, or if you didn't have a servant, your children would wash people's feet. It was something that he would do. But for Jesus to get up and wash feet, I think if it's something like this. A neurosurgeon today, brain surgeon, goes to school for 14 to 16 years of medical school. Let that sink in. 14 to 16 years of medical school. They make, coming out of school, they make anywhere from $600,000 a year to $1.1 million a year. Sign me up, baby. Huh? Wow. You imagine that's a lot of education. That's a lot of training. That's a lot of elevation. And this is what reminds me of. Can you imagine being in an operating room where a brain surgeon just does brain surgery on somebody, and then all of the nurses and the helpers in that room, that when they're done, they all go and they take off their clothes. What are those called? Their scrubs. They take their scrubs off and the towels, whatever, they put them in a pile. This would be, what nurse or what helper, what doctor in that room wouldn't just be in awe if the surgeon went and picked all that up, went down to the basement, did the laundry, folded it all, and brought it back up to the room? Who wouldn't just go, what? What? Isn't there somebody else that can do that? That's what it would be like. But Jesus goes on to say why he did what he did. And this is the important part. After washing their feet, he put on his robe again and sat down and asked, do you understand what I was doing? No, I don't have a clue. What were you doing? I mean, can you imagine the shock? You call me teacher and Lord. And you are right, because that's what I am. I am your Lord. I am your teacher. I am your leader. I am the CEO. I am the president. I am that. And since I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought to wash each other's feet. I have given you an example to follow. Do as I have done for you. Jesus said, hey, I did this for a reason. I am showing you as an example I myself will do so that you pick up from it. And he wasn't talking about, I want you to wash each other's feet. He wasn't talking about that. It's way deeper than that. He's not saying, hey, what I want you to do is, say, once a year, I want you to just do a foot washing ceremony to prove how much, that you are a servant. That's not the point. His point was this. I'm giving you an example that no matter how high you think you are, no matter what position you may hold, no matter who you may think you are, I want you to humble yourself and be the servant of others. That was his point. I am your teacher, your leader. I'm God, and I am doing this to show you that this is what I want you to do. I want you to humble yourself, reduce yourself down to the lowest servant to serve one another. Think about that. He was talking about a heart change. He was talking about an attitude. I want you to have this attitude. I want you to see the world in a different way. He was talking about a whole paradigm shift of how I want you to see this hierarchy of importance and value. I want you to completely change it completely and have a new attitude. The Apostle Paul explains what Jesus did and explains this more in a letter that he wrote. He says, don't be selfish. How are we doing with that one? Don't be selfish. This is a part of this attitude that Jesus is trying to say. A complete shift from the world's way of thinking, complete shift from how we are brought up, complete shift from how the American way is, and a complete shift. Don't be selfish. Don't try to impress others. I'm somebody. Hey, look at me. Hey, I'm better at that than you are. Hey, I'm a little better dressed than you. I have a little more money than you. I'm smarter than you. Hey, don't be trying to impress others. Here's the point. Be humble. Jesus is trying to portray this, to be a humble servant. Thinking of others as better than yourselves. Now, not as better in a sense that you're worthless or no, in a minute I'm going to kind of catch up with this, but we're talking about coming from an attitude, our attitude of, no, I am good. I'm fine. I'm all right. It is coming from an attitude of, I'm satisfied. I'm fulfilled. I'm good. I am going to look at your needs. I'm going to think about you. My attitude is going to be about you. How are you? What's going on in your life? How can I help you? How about this one? How can I listen to you? How can I take time with you? That it's about others. When we meet other people and around other people, his whole point is, I want your life to be about other people and not about your own selfishness, not about your pride, not about you. I want you to be about others. Don't look off here. Okay. But take an interest in others. Also, you must have the same attitude that Christ Jesus had. This is the whole Last Supper. This is the whole washing the feet. This is in these last hours that Jesus had. He is making this point by his own demonstration. This is the attitude in which I want you to live out the rest of your life. As Jesus being our example, and he finishes, the example goes further than washing feet. He goes, though he was God, he did not think of equality with God as something to cling to. Instead, he gave up his divine privileges. He took the humble position of a slave and was born as a human being. When he appeared in human form, he humbled himself, again, this humility, in obedience to God, and died a criminal's death on a cross. Jesus was giving an example of how he wants his followers to be. I want you to be like me. And look at my example. I'm God, but yet I humbled myself and became a servant. I want you to do that, to humble yourself and become a servant. Then Jesus said after that, he said, and you will be blessed if you do it. There's a blessing to actually caring about people. There is a blessing to not being a haughty, arrogant, it's all about me, selfish human being. As a matter of fact, we all see the pain it causes. We see the pain in people's lives. When we or somebody else thinks they're better than others. There's a guy I know, he's a bow hunter, and it's one of my hobbies. I just love to bow hunt. And but this guy's famous at it. This guy actually makes a living doing it. This guy's on TV. And it's somehow in our culture, if you're on TV, you're better than other people. Yeah. I stood on my TV and nothing happened. But anyway, however, this gentleman I know, he's a very nice and kind person. And I've had several conversations with him, but here's how it goes every time. I can have a conversation with him and he's kind of tuned in until somebody more important than me walks in the room. Every time. As soon as somebody that he perceives to be more important than me, now I am thrown out with the garbage, and now it's all about somebody else and pretending like I'm not even there. You ever been there? In a situation like that? How does it make you feel? Because inside you're thinking the truth probably, and that is this. He's a jerk. Okay, not that. The truth is this. He's sort of more valuable than me just because he's on TV. He's not worth more than I am. And I think there's all kinds of pain that's caused when we act, when we're selfish. Hey, have you ever lived with a selfish person? It's painful. It's all about them. And it's hurtful. And I think sometimes we think, well, that's not me. I'm talking to a room full of people, or even everybody watching. It's none of us. It's somebody else. But you ever ask yourself, man, how much am I like that? We're the last to discover it. But how much am I like that? And just ask yourself some questions. Do you ever feel like when you come into a room, it's got to be about you? Do you ever feel like that? Have you ever acted like that? Like when you come into a room, hey, I got to be the guy here and everybody notice me. Listen, if that's how you're acting, you're hurting other people. Have you ever felt like this? Have you ever felt like I'm more important than them? Have you ever walked by people at work thinking, well, they don't really matter? You're hurting people. You're hurting them in our life and what we do. And Jesus said, you'll be blessed if you have this other attitude, because arrogant, prideful, selfish people hurt everybody around them. And all of us are like that a little bit. Some are pretty good at it. Some of us are horrible at it. But here's what Jesus was really displaying. Jesus was displaying that that's God's nature. when he got down and washed their feet, when he humbled himself to be a servant, when he went to the cross, he was displaying God's very nature. Because God himself is so loving that God, this is weird, but God values you as much as anything in the world. And God doesn't value you more than you or you more than you. And it doesn't matter what your lifestyle is, where you've been, how educated you are, how much money you have, how well you speak, what you do. It doesn't matter. It is God's very nature of who God is that every human being is valuable. And to God, it's all about you. It's all about us. God doesn't hang around heaven doing everything for him. He's good. He don't need it. He's all about doing for us, focusing for us. Imagine God of the universe came into this room. He wouldn't be telling you all about himself and how many deer he shot and what he's done and all his accomplishments. You know what he would do? He'd say, how are you? How are you doing? What's going on in your life? How can I help you? It's the very heart and nature of God. It's amazing. And this, Jesus goes on and explains more about God's love. He says, so now I am giving you a new commandment. Love each other, just as I have loved you. You should love each other. Your love for one another will prove to the whole world that you are my disciples, that you are connected to me, that you have me in you. This God's nature, this love for one another. What Jesus is saying is, the world is going to know that I am real and I am the truth if you have my nature. Because you know what? The world's going to like it. The world's going to like my nature if we could just reveal the nature of God. And that is a love for one another. A love that you are what this is about. It's not about me today. It's not about me when I go in the room. It's not about me. And I've spent a lot of my life being about me. Trust me, and it's embarrassing as I look back. And God is still working. But I'll tell you what, I find that life is better the less it's about me. The better life becomes. I had a great story. I looked this up. It was 12 years ago. 12 years ago, I was invited by a guy named Randy McPherson. He is the brother to Matthew McPherson. So Randy invited me and my son and another friend. So there was 3 of us. And he invited us, and he drove us out to his brother's shop. And his brother is the owner and manufacturer of 2 companies. He makes Matthews Archery, Matthews Bows, and he makes McPherson Guitars. And I don't know if you know anything about them, but they're very, very successful. He does over $30 million a year in business. I mean, this guy's made it, okay? He's made it. It's amazing. So I just feel awesomely blessed that we get to go through this tour of the plant where they make archery stuff, make bows. And we go through this. Here's where they make this. Here's where they drill it. We walk through. As we're walking through, they're making a bow for us. I mean, I get this gift. It's this incredible thing. I just felt so blessed. But the best part of the day was this. This Matthew McPherson is an incredible Christian man. And at the end of the day, or in the middle, we looked at the bow stuff and built this bow. And then we went to the guitar place where they build the guitars. And anyway, in between, we had lunch. Matthew McPherson. We walk into this room. There's lunch already out on the table. And we sit down, and Matthew McPherson sits down with us. Now, this guy's doing over $30 million a year. This guy's extremely successful. He sits down with us at lunch, and there's just 4 of us there. Hi, how are you guys? What's your name? What do you do? He talked for like 20 minutes all about us before he ever mentioned any of his accolades or things. Matter of fact, he never did. He told us about of division of archery that he makes. It's called the missions bows, a missions division. And he just was saying that every dollar I make from missions bows, I send to missions. And then he was just telling us about his heart for God, and he loves God, and he likes to write Christian music and just all that stuff. But here's the point. Will the world know? Will the world be drawn if God's people love one another more than they love themselves? Because I was impressed with this guy. He did not impress us. He did not say who all his stuff. We sat and had lunch with him, and what he was concerned about was us, who we are. Do we do any hunting? How long we've been shooting bow? It was just absolutely amazing. Can you imagine? And I want you to just imagine this. Can you imagine if every Christian was like that? How would your home life look? How would your place of employment look? How would your own life look? Can you imagine if we took what Jesus was saying in these final hours? Listen, I'm giving you an example. I want you to humble yourself, not be about you. I want your life to be about others, loving others, doing for others, blessing others. Imagine what the world would look like. Imagine what the church would look like. I think it's a pretty cool place now, but imagine how much better it would be if we did. There was last Sunday, the Super Bowl was on, and there was a commercial played during the Super Bowl. And I think a little bit that this might remind us what would the world might look like. Not physically washing people's feet, but to really value other people and be about them. Watch this commercial. The fact that was played on the Super Bowl, I think, is amazing and awesome. And I just want to address, I know that there was some controversy about the commercial. Some Christians felt like maybe it was promoting that Jesus would wash the feet of unrepentant sinners, whatever. But I just want you to know where I stand. He most definitely would wash the feet of unrepentant sinners. As a matter of fact, I want to remind you that Judas Iscariot, the one who betrayed Jesus, in just a few minutes after, Jesus washed Judas's feet. And the point of the message that Jesus was trying to tell us, and the point of the message of this is, God has called us to be an example like he is, to love each other, to look at other people as just as valuable as us, to be more concerned about them than us, than my needs. But here's a point, and I just kind of want to end with this. We're gonna just talk about this for a few minutes. How do we do that? How do we? How do we move from a place where, hey, I need to think of you, your needs? Even simply, how do I move from thinking about my wife's needs before mine? How do I ever change with, hey, listen, I want to get what I need first, and then my leftover I'll give to somebody else or help? How do we move past these things? And I think this is what's keeping us from doing what Jesus said. What's keeping us is this. We're broken on the inside. That on the inside, we feel like we don't have enough value, so we have to get it from others. That inside, I don't feel secure, so what I got to do is act, pretend, manipulate, and get it from it. That in here, I'm not satisfied, so I need to give myself what I need to be satisfied. I need one more thing. I need to do that. In here, I don't have peace, so I can't share with others in here. And here's the issue with Christianity. This is what God offers. This is the answer for us to be what Jesus is telling us to be. And that is to find our healing and our fulfillment in a relationship with God. Because God, that last song we sang today, sorry if you're watching, you didn't hear that, but this whole thing about, hey, I need more of Jesus. I need more of God in here. Because only God is going to ever help me feel like I'm okay. And only God is going to help me feel secure enough that I don't need your approval. Only God's going to satisfy me enough that I don't need to do everything I think I need to do. It's only when we experience God's healing in here and God's film and God's fixing us in here, then, because here's what it is. When you and I are completely satisfied, when we are satisfied in our soul, when we are completed, when we are healed in our soul, then we want to be about others. Then we want to give to others and help others because it's no longer about me. God took care of me. Now I can take care of you. And I just love how clear the Apostle Paul puts this. It's a very simple thing. For God is working in you. If we let him, God is working in you, giving you the desire and the power to do what pleases him. And far too often, we try to just do it on the outside, do it on our own, but yet we're so broken in here. We end up hurting people, and we can do an act of service. Okay, we can do a foot washing service, and it's one act. God's not interested in our one act. He's interested in our paradigm, our attitude shift, our being complete so that we can honestly and truly be about other people. That's God's nature. That's what God's about. Being about others. But we can't until we allow God to heal us and God to fulfill us. It's a process. But I wonder, is that what we're pursuing? Are we pursuing God to fill us? God, I need you to heal me, to fulfill me, to satisfy me. Because when he does, everything comes out right. Today I want to end the service with taking a few minutes just to pray that way. And I want to encourage you to maybe even just this week, it can be a focus of your life to ask God to do it in here so that we can do it out there. Let God do the doing. And maybe some of us even realize, most of us don't, but maybe you realize, man, I am very selfish. I am all about me. Maybe we need to go to God and say, God, I'm like that because I'm empty and I'm not satisfied. Will you satisfy me? Let's spend a few minutes talking to God. Father, we all have these broken issues in our life. We do. And even living in this culture doesn't help. It makes us more and more selfish. And we think we need more and more. We see on TV, we see sports heroes and movie stars and singers, and we just think, I need that kind of fame. I need that kind of recognition. I need other people to see me or to know how great I am. And Father, that's just simply not true. The only one that can satisfy us and heal us is your presence. You created us to be complete with you in us. If you are not in us, we will be constantly incomplete. Father, I ask you to complete me. I pray that you would work in me. Do your work in my life, in my brokenness, in my emptiness, in my fear. Do your work in me. Father, that thing I'm craving, satisfy it. Fill me. Heal that brokenness, that emptiness. I think I can fill it another way, but I've proven to myself I can't. You have to do your work in me. I ask you, Father, to start working in my life, in all of us. Start working in our life so that we could really know who we are in you. There's no one better than us. We are all your absolute favorite. We are all talented. We are all just the way you made us. We are all perfect in that sense. Father, may we experience your approval. May we experience your forgiveness. May we experience your completing of who we are. I pray in Jesus' awesome name. Amen.